Is the Blackbird 3 Covert Ops secretly one of the most overpowered and broken ships in EVE Echoes? That was kind of the question on my mind when I started this video. Recently I've been trying to cover some of the ships that people just don't talk about that much. Things like the Stabber 2, the Vexor 2, heck I've even had a look at the Praxis 2. And I've uncovered that whilst not necessarily as good as some of the other options, they are still very much viable ships and can do some really cool things. And I've had a lot of people sending me things like kill mails from their Stabber 2s just to show how powerful that ship can actually be. And I've had a few for the Vexor 2 as well. This got me to thinking. Covert Ops Cruisers are a very popular choice with PvPers, especially the Bellicose and the Arbitrator line. The Celestis lags behind a little bit, but nobody even talks about the Blackbird Covert Ops line, much less actually flies them. These are probably the least talked about ships in the entirety of EVE Echoes, and that's saying something in a game that also has the Venture 4. Basically, I went into this thinking, maybe there's something we're all missing on this, right? Maybe there are some really useful niche applications that the Blackbird Covert Ops actually really excels at. And so that's what I'm going to be doing in today's video. I've been speaking to a lot of people who do actually, it turns out, fly these from time to time. I've talked to people about why they don't fly them, and I've gone to a lot of depth to actually try and figure out, can this thing even be useful? So, in today's video, that's what we're going to be unpacking. If you do enjoy this, please let me know, hit like on it, subscribe if you haven't already, and I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions on this and any other ship that you fly in the comment section down below, specifically the Blackbird Covert Ops series. But if you do happen to fly some other really niche ships, reach out, make contact, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Anyway, with all that said and done then, let's jump right in to talking about the Blackbird 3 Covert Ops. The Covert Ops Cruisers are actually some of my favourite cruisers in EVE Echoes. I'm a big fan of any ship with Covert Ops capabilities. I spend most of my time flying around in a Probe Explorer or an Astero. I love the Stratios. I love my Bellicose 3 Covert Ops for a bit of sort of fun flying around with that. Heck, I even have a Wreath 2 that I usually fully fill with ores and then just go flying around in hostile space, hoping that someone will actually be clever enough to catch me. These are the things I do for fun these days because, well, I'm never flying capitals. Now, all four of the main empires have their own Covert Ops Cruisers, or rather, that cruiser line actually starts as an electronic warfare cruiser, we'll talk about in a moment. The Amarr Empire starts with the Arbitrator line, the Minmatar Republic has the Bellicose line, the Gallente Federation has the Celestis line, and the Caldari State has the Blackbird line that we're talking about today. Now, as I mentioned, these technically start at tech level 6, with the Blackbird, Bellicose, Arbitrator, and Celestis. These are not Covert Ops, they are just cruisers. They are technically electronic warfare cruisers. They're bonused for their particular type of E-War. In the Blackbird's case, that's guidance disruptors. For the Arbitrator, that's tracking disruptors. For the Bellicose, that's target painters. And for the Celestis, that is sensor dampeners. After tech level 6, you come to tech level 7, and then we get our first Covert Ops variant, the Blackbird, Covert Ops, Bellicose, so on and so forth. I'm not going to go through the list every single time. These suddenly get that Covert Ops cloaking device capability, and the ability to fit sinusoidal field generators if you want to fly through hostile space, light a sino beacon, and drop a capital fleet on someone's head with minimal notice. Once we hit tech level 8, we do get another Blackbird, but this time it is the Interdictor, designed to catch and hold prey in position using a warp disruption field generator, outside the scope of this video. At tech level 9, our only Caldari cruiser is the Blackbird 2 Covert Ops, and this is just a direct upgrade over the Blackbird Covert Ops. Then finally, at tech level 10, we have the Blackbird 3 Covert Ops, which is the subject of today's video. Now, the eagle-eyed of you may have already spotted that I've got the comparisons open on the left-hand side of the screen. We will come back to that later. I want to give the Blackbird 3 Covert Ops time to stand on its own feet, as it were, before we start making comparisons. Now, I do really like the look of the Blackbird vessels. I'm not gonna lie, these are not my favourite cruisers out there. That's a very niche list, but I do really love the look of these, and I wish the ships were more used because they just look so cool. I love the angles on these. I love the way that the wings fold up and down as it goes in and out of warp. Heck, even on this version, once we add on the Caldari Navy skin, look at that. That just looks so cool. That really does look cool. I like a lot of the Caldari ships, especially their cruisers. This is one that just, it really does it for me. I like that. Let's have a look at the attributes and fittings though. So the Blackbird 3 Covert Ops, like all the other Covert Ops Cruisers, except of course the Arbitrator, because it's a drone one, we have one drone tube that launches medium drones or small drones. We have 4 high slots primarily geared around missiles, 4 mid slots for a decent amount of versatility in regards to electronic warfare, capacitor warfare, sinusoidal field generators, scanners, that kind of thing, and 4 low slots means we're not as tanky as, for example, something like the Caracal 2. If you're a medium missile cruiser pilot and you're looking for something tanky, the Caracal 2 is going to be your better option because of that 5th low slot. Now, on that subject, if we actually look at the defenses of the Caracal 2 and the Blackbird 3 Covert Ops side by side, you'll see that actually the Caracal has lower HP overall, lower defense overall. And yeah, you might be wondering how I'm arguing that this is the less tanky of the two when this one has more EHP. Well, yes, it has more EHP, but that lack of low slot means you can't really do much with it. You're only going to fit maybe like 1 repper and a hardener, at which point you've not got, it's just not as good as something like a Caracal 2 where you can fit 2 hardeners and an oversized repper just for the lols. But hey, the point I'm getting at here is that 4th low slot does make a big difference. The defense is slightly higher than the Caracal 2, but, you know, it still doesn't work out tankier, not even close to. The power grid of the Blackbird 3 Covert Ops is also surprisingly good. It's a Caldari ship, they have good power grid. 763 megawatts, that is surprisingly large and lets us play with some really interesting toys which I'll showcase later on in the fitting section. Capacitors, pretty good. Again, it's a Caldari ship, 2,908 gigajoules. We are nearly 3,000 gigajoules of capacitor on this bad boy. That's not bad at all. Again, being a PvP vessel, you're unlikely to get this anywhere near cap stability, but it's still not bad. You get some good times out of it. Signature radius is 82 meters, but that does lie to you because we do get some bonuses for that, which we'll talk about in a moment. The real problem with the Blackbird 3 Covert Ops comes with its flight velocity, its mass, and its inertia. Now, when I say a Covert Ops vessel all about sneaking through enemy space, you expect it to be quite small and quite fast moving, fairly agile, right? Yeah, the Blackbird is just none of those. It is the slowest moving of the Covert Ops Cruisers, and in fact, it's slower than quite a few non-Covert Ops Cruisers as well. The mass and the inertia twin together to also make it slightly clunky, and slow and slightly clunky are not words you really think of when you say Covert Ops Cruiser, and that is why I think a lot of people are immediately put off by the Blackbird 3 Covert Ops, because it is just slower and clunkier than literally all of the other Tech 10 Covert Ops Cruisers. Anyway, let's have a look at that trait description. Now, like all of the Covert Ops Cruisers, the Blackbird 3 Covert Ops gets that ability to fit sinusoidal field generators and Covert Ops cloaking devices. It even gets a nice little perky reduction to the lock delay between dropping your cloak and locking onto a target. That is really useful. That is a really nice ability. And yeah, all of the Tech 10 Covert Ops Cruisers have that ability. Now, all of the Covert Ops Cruisers as well gain their benefits from advanced micro-warp drive operation and advanced cruiser command. If you had no skills in any of the medium weapons for whatever reason, theoretically you can still fly these while maxing out their bonuses. Now we'll have a look at the Advanced Cruiser Command first, because this is the one that really does showcase those high slots. Advanced Cruiser Command gives us a 5% or 25 at full training missile torpedo flight velocity. That's additional speed and thus also additional range on the missiles because they go further before their fuel runs out. That is 25% additional range and faster hitting missiles. Not that the faster really makes much of a difference in EVE Echoes, but hey, there we go. And then the 12.5% missile torpedo damage. That again, we're looking at a 45% there at full training. Sorry, no, 36.5%. No, my maths is terrible. You can work out what that is. 2 of those is 25. It's 50%. It's then 62.5%. Oh my goodness, Benzie, you need to get better at your mental arithmetic. That was atrocious, but I'm going to leave that in, not editing that out just for the lols. Then finally, we have a 4% reduction to signature radius, 20% reduction to signature radius. Remember I said that 82 meters was lying? Yes, it is. It's not 82 meters if you are trained into the Blackbird 3 Covert Ops. It's actually closer to 60 meters, which is a lot smaller. Which is really, really nice. Having a look at advanced micro warp drive operation, however, you can see where this one begins to shine compared to the others in regards to the guidance disruptors. 50% additional guidance disruptor jammer strength. This means if your target is using missiles and you are fitted with guidance disruptors, you are going to do some significant trolling on them. You're going to be basically halving the range of their missiles and reducing their explosion velocity, all this kind of stuff, just making their missiles absolutely pathetic. It's a surprisingly powerful bit of E-War. You don't really hear a lot of people talking about these. I think a lot of people rather fit neutralizers and stuff rather than the E-War, but honestly, I think this is where the Blackbird 3 Covert Ops secretly really shines, and we'll talk about this more later on. Finally, then we get a 50% reduction to the warp drive signature radius penalty. Don't let that wording fool you, that is micro warp drive. When you put a micro warp drive on, it increases the signature radius of your ship by however many percent. In the case of the Blackbird 3 Covert Ops, it increases only 50% of the shown micro warp drive penalty. So if it was a 300% penalty, it's going to be a 150% penalty. It's a big difference, and it means that the Blackbird 3 Covert Ops does actually effectively speed tank with a micro warp drive. That is key. That is absolutely key. Now, having given the Blackbird 3 Covert Ops a little bit of time to shine on its own, let's compare it to its closest compatriot, the Bellicose 3 Covert Ops from the Minmatar Republic. Now, first of all, you can see these have the exact same fitting profile. That is already a, well, it's a direct comparison. It's a direct comparison. As we come down, we then continue that direct comparison with sinusoidal field generators, cloaking devices, and cloaking device lock delay. As we come a little bit further, we then have that same 50% reduction to micro warp drive signature radius penalty. The difference here is that the Bellicose gets bonuses to target painters, and the Blackbird 3 gets bonuses to guidance disruptors. Now, the advantage of target painters is that they're fitted to your ship, which means that you get that bonus against whatever you are fighting. The Blackbird, however, is relying on guidance disruptors. You are screwing with your opponent's ship, not so much your own, and thus you are locked in on that. Obviously, the Blackbird 3 Covert Ops, you're going to want to be hunting missile ships, because that's when your guidance disruptors are actually doing the best. As we go a little bit further down, you'll see that they both get that reduction to signature radius, and if we go a little bit lower, you should see, it doesn't actually show it on this one, but the Bellicose 3 Covert Ops is actually a smaller signature radius to start with, and it is a faster flight velocity to start with, meaning the Bellicose 3 Covert Ops with a micro warp drive is just flat out a better speed tank than the Blackbird 3 Covert Ops can be with the same kind of equipment. They then both get that 5% medium missile torpedo flight velocity, which is 25% at full training, of course. The big difference here, and I'm still not sure why Netties do this, is the reduction between the medium missile torpedo damage on the two. On the Bellicose 3, that's 15% per level. On the Blackbird 3, that's 12.5% per level. You are looking at a significant difference there. 62.5% on the Blackbird 3, 75% on the Bellicose 3. And considering the Bellicose is getting bonuses to its target painters, which affect its own missiles, yeah, it means you actually apply that damage really, really well, and then you've got all the speed boosts and things like that. It just, when you put these two ships side by side, essentially the Bellicose 3 Covert Ops just really shines, except for some very niche circumstances. So that's what we're going to talk about then, isn't it? In this video, I'm going to be showcasing two different fits for the Blackbird 3 Covert Ops, and before we go any further, two big warnings. First of all, I am not a PvPer. I will put my hands up and happily admit to that. When I do PvP ship reviews and videos like this, I am relying on information given to me by other people that I have spoken with extensively, plus my knowledge of theory crafting and just how Eve Echoes works in general. The second big alert on this one is that these fits are incredibly skill sensitive. You will need to download the Sweet Fitting app, the Fit Sweeting app. Yes, that one too, the Sweet Fitting app, to make sure that your skills are up to the fit, and it may allow you to change out some of the rigs. Now, the most important skills on this are going to be cruiser engineering, which increases your ship's natural power grid, whilst also at higher tiers in the expert level, also reducing the power grid cost of any medium high slots. Plus, if you go go into battle cruiser engineering, if you're one of those people who has battle cruisers and cruiser skills, then battle cruiser engineering also reduces the power grid cost of all medium high slots, which will help you with fitting this particular ship and might mean you don't need to have quite the same rig setup as I have. Now, the first fit is the one that I personally rate a little bit higher, but I will showcase the other one anyway just to prove it can be done. This one uses large rapid missiles. I've got 2 Pith C-type large rapid missile launchers combined with 2 Pitham C-type medium missile launchers. Why mediums with large rapids? Because they have the exact same range, the exact same application. The only difference is that these ones get more DPS. You can see 211 DPS compared to 165. This is also fairly incumbent on having large missile skills as well, which I do happen to have. Otherwise, obviously, going with medium missiles is probably going to still give you better DPS. But if you have large missile skills, you may as well use them, because in this case, you can see we're not changing our range at all. 44.94 kilometers here. We can sit at 40 kilometers quite comfortably, and all of those weapons are going to be hitting with the exact same application statistics. Not so true for their missiles, however. Caldari Navy Guidance Disruptor here, this is going to really screw with their missiles. You're going to be messing with their explosion velocity and their explosion radius, thus making them apply their missiles far, far worse, and a flight time bonus of negative 41.25%. You thought I was kidding when I said you could half the range. Well, okay, I wasn't being entirely accurate now, was I? I was 8.75% off, but it's close enough, right? If they've got 50-kilometer missiles, they're basically down to 25Ks. If you're sitting at 40Ks and they've got 40K missiles, medium missiles as well they're not going to be hitting you, are they? Even if they are hitting you, the explosion velocity and the explosion radius penalties that they'll be suffering mean you actually take a lot less damage. Now, does this have the most amazing DPS of any of the Covert Ops Cruisers? No, 790.82 is pretty low comparatively to some of the others, but it's not terrible either. It's a good amount of damage output. You can get a lot done with that. You just need to really pick your targets to make sure you are getting the utmost out of that Guidance Disruptor. In fact, if you can afford it, I would probably swap out the scanner. If you're going roaming with someone, let someone else take the scanner, you then take 2 Guidance Disruptors instead. I mean, you could also instead swap out one of the warp disruptors, but ultimately, considering they've only got 2 warp strength anyway, I kind of wouldn't. I would go with 2 of those just to make sure you pin your target down. And you might already be saying, hang on a second, Benzie, 27.5 kilometers, you were just talking about sitting at 40 kilometers. Well, yes, you can sit at 40 kilometers and you can still hit them if they're in an interdictor sphere, for example, if you're doing something like a gate camp. But at the same token, if you do happen to want to pin them yourself, if you are solo roaming, you want to be sitting close to about 25, 27 Ks to keep those warp disruptors going. The thing is, your missiles will still be doing absolutely perfect at that range, whereas theirs, thanks to the Guidance Disruptor, will probably still be missing. Pick your targets carefully and use that Guidance Disruptor to the best of your ability. Now for the low slots here, I've gone for a Republic Fleet medium micro warp drive. You can actually fit a Gisty in here as well, I just didn't have one handy, alongside a C-type ballistic control system, a medium shield extender, and of course the Covert Ops cloaking device. If you're flying a Covert Ops ship, I really don't see why you would ever not have the cloaking device fitted, but hey, that's just me. Either way, 753.25 DPS just from those missiles. Defense isn't great, but again, it's a Covert Ops ship, and it could be worse. We've got a good amount of capacitor, 2 minutes 40 seconds, with everything running, which it shouldn't be for the most part. Targeting, you're nice and small, 71 meters there, good scan resolution to lock onto them, and yeah, you're not particularly fast, but you probably will have the micro warp drive active. And this is done by then having a Warhead Califaction Catalyst ×2, and a core defense field extender. Hang on a second, Benzie, you're not using anti-EM? No, I'm not using an anti-EM on here because I'm going primarily up against other missile ships. Missiles don't really do that much in electromagnetic damage, and if someone sees a Caldari ship, they're probably going to, if they're using a missile implant that can swap the damage type they do, they're probably going to go for thermal anyway. I would rather go for a shield bonus here because it's a Caldari ship. You've got massive shields to start with. Getting 30% additional shield HP, just to me, it works out better in the long run because you're basically saying, I'm expecting to go up against electromagnetic damage, and this is not a ship that is designed for hunting EM targets. Anyway, this is also facilitated by 3 ancillary power grid routers, but again, if you happen to have gone all the way to Cruiser Engineering 5, you may find you only need 2 of those. If you also have Battle Cruiser Engineering Expert 5, you might be able to get away with only 1 ancillary power grid router because of the reductions that Battle Cruiser Engineering Expert 5 gives to the power grid requirements for those high slots. And that's just where things start. You can see we've got a little bit of power grid here left over. That, again, would allow you to upgrade that Republic Fleet Medium Micro Warp Drive if you wanted, but I have a better option. I'm not gonna lie, this is a very messy fit. I'm sitting here at Cruiser Engineering 554. I do not have a single skill point invested in Battle Cruiser Engineering, and you'll see I'm sitting at exactly... well, okay, not exactly, but I'm almost exactly full on the power grid here. There's literally 3 PG off, 3 megawatts off maximized, and this does require you to do some rather janky stuff in the high slots. Again, we've got a couple of Pitham C-type medium missile launchers, and I do mean a couple. The third one's actually a Republic Fleet medium missile launcher, because we don't have enough power grid for 3 C-types. We then have a Caldari Navy large rapid missile launcher. This is the best way to get DPS using the remaining power grid. Most of this fit is exactly the same, but we have swapped out, this time, the medium extender for a large shield extender. This makes this astonishingly tanky. If you start taking damage because you got a little bit too close or someone else joined in and you're trying to warp away, then that Protector large shield extender is going to keep you going quite nicely. Very, very tanky for a covert ops ship. It does increase your signature radius a little bit. We're now 86 rather than 71, but, you know, these are the prices we pay. The DPS has also dropped down a bit to 698, 661 if you're only counting the missiles, but ultimately, yeah, that's the maximum amount of DPS you can get with the remaining power grid after the large shield extender, and this really does require all 3 of those ancillary power grid routers, again, unless you perhaps happen to have the 5th point in Expert Cruiser Engineering, and probably Expert 5 in Battle Cruiser Engineering as well. I would recommend those if you want to really try and max out your power grid usage. This is one of those fits that some people like me look at and despair, because that means rather than just having 1 or 2 weapon buttons on my heads-up display, I'm actually going to have 3. I'm going to have 1 for the Caldari Navy large rapid missiles, 1 for the Republic Fleet medium missiles, and another one for the C-type medium missiles as well. So it's a little bit messy, and I think a lot of people look at this kind of stuff and it just feels, I don't know, maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just me that feels uncomfortable when I look at a fit that is this messy with different level stuff. I like to try and make my fits all match, you know. It's a silly little thing, but it's how I like it. And the fact that I know this isn't matching does actually upset me a little bit, but the fact that it's so close to full on the power grid does make it up, I think. And this is one of those things that I've spoken to a few people about and just gone, look, large extender plus that amount of DPS, and they're like, yeah, you know what, that's going to do some damage. Anything that's got missiles, you are just going to tank through any damage they happen to do. You'll probably take out battleships with this, because that guidance disruptor is just going to utterly wreck their application. And if they do start doing a little bit of damage to you, you just pop that extender and off you go. You are laughing. I don't know. I think both of these fits are pretty cool. I personally lean a bit more towards the first one, but that's because I'm one of these people, I like the big numbers on my DPS, you know? I like the big numbers on the DPS. And also the first fit that I showed, the dual large rapid missile one, actually does PvE surprisingly well as well. You can actually do some really quite high tier NDS. You can do special anomalies at difficulty 8 or higher, tier 8 or higher. You can do really well with it. It's a surprisingly powerful little cruiser. But that does bring us to the central question, really, of this video then, doesn't it? You know, is this the most overpowered and broken ship in EVE Echoes, and just no one knows about it, so no one's flying it, no one knows the secret? Yeah, no, that's just really not the case. It's not a very good ship, for a couple of reasons. One, when this ship was first designed in EVE Online, it didn't use guidance disruptors. Guidance disruptors are still Amarr. Amarr get tracking disruptors and guiding disruptors. It's a single module that has different modes, basically, that you can swap the module between. Is it using its tracking disruption mode, or is it using its guidance disruption mode, depending on what script you equip to it on the fitting screen. And yeah, that left the Caldari ships with ECM, Electronic Countermeasures. And this is still artifacted in the game. If we jump back into the fitting menu and we go actually into the ship full time, probably faster to go through the ship tree to look at this, but if we go into attributes and fittings, there's sensor strength there on the right hand side, 20.4. That stat has no use in EVE Echoes whatsoever, because that is based on ECM. Electronic countermeasures is essentially a jamming thing that forces enemy ships to unlock their targets, and it works by having the jammer strength basically have a boxing match with the sensor strength. The higher the sensor strength and the lower the jamming strength, then the less likely it is that you're going to get that lock broken. But if you have a very high jamming strength and they have a low sensor strength, you can just click that lock off repeatedly and make them lock on again. And that is so powerful. It's a form of electronic warfare that we just don't have in EVE Echoes, and I am still, to this day, perplexed why they didn't bother adding that when the other E-War came. We should have had... I don't think we necessarily needed to have, you know, the good old weapon disruptors with tracking and guidance disruption scripts. I think that's confusing. We should have just had the Amarr ships getting bonuses to guidance and tracking disruptors, and then both modules go on the Amarr ships, whereas the Caldari ships should have had that ECM, and for the longest time, these ships on the ship tree actually had bonuses to ECM jammer strength. Just they never bothered actually adding it, which is such a shame, because that would make the Blackbird an incredibly popular ship. And that would also explain the second problem with the Blackbird, which is, why does it have a lower DPS value than the Bellicose? Like, it really should have the exact same stats for missile damage and missile range as the Bellicose does. Especially since the Bellicose is also guaranteed to be actually applying that damage better due to its own target painters. You know, its target painters make the target bigger, so that those are going to be doing better application against the target, whereas the Blackbird 3 doesn't have those boosted up target painters, but is still expected to do damage despite having lower stats. I don't know, this is one that I'm really hoping gets fixed in a balance patch, or one day NetEase comes back and gives us ECM and moves the guidance disruptor skills across to Amarr as well. I don't know. Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. If this is a ship that you have flown in the past, tell me about it. Tell me your experiences. If you've got some cool kill mails, come find me on Discord and show me. I want to see more people flying ships that they enjoy, even if they are not the quote-unquote best ships in their option. Yeah, if you are a Covert Ops PvPer, chances are you are going to do better with a Bellicose than you would with a Blackbird. Unless you're going up against a target that uses missiles, at which point the Blackbird 3, I think, is worth its weight in gold. And honestly, I think a roam that uses all 4 Covert Ops Cruiser hulls is a scary thing. That's 4 players going around. They are maximizing the missile damage and turret damage they can do on you by making you a larger target. They are going to be slowing down your lock-on speed, and they're going to be jamming both of your turrets and your missiles. That's a terrifying prospect to hunt against, and I just don't see enough of that. And it would give me a reason. If someone decides they want to go on one of those roams, hit me up. I'd love to bring the Blackbird. I think this would be a fun ship to fly. Anyway, folks, those are my thoughts and opinions. Let me hear yours. Otherwise, thank you for watching right the way through to the end of this one. Happy sailing, and see you all in New Eden.